Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some more cards that are trending on the market in the aftermath of the most recent ban list. We did see a ton of really big changes. The list really shook up a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that people are playing around with to try to be as prepared as possible going into next format. Now, some of these things should be pretty obvious and we should have seen them coming pretty easily, while other things might be for decks or techs that are pretty easy to overlook, so we're going to cover a bunch of those today as well. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at one of the most interesting cards over the last week or so, Triple Tactics Thrust. So I think one of the changes on the last list that players were really excited about was the limiting of talents, and looking back at it, it makes a lot of sense. Talents is literally 3 different banned cards rolled into one, so it was only a matter of time before the card became completely broken. However, I do think that it might be sort of easy to forget about the fact that Thrust is still at 3, and Thrust is actually able to search for talents. Your opponent has to control a monster for you to add talents to your hand, but with all the hand traps in the game right now, I think that should be pretty easy to do. And on top of that, Thrust is also pretty flexible because going into games 2 and game 3, you can side in cards like Different Dimension Ground or Dimensional Barrier if you're going first, or Feather Duster and Lightning Storm going second, and get additional utility if you happen to have already drawn your one of talents. Now, fortunately, Thrust was in Rarity Collection 3, so it's available in Super, Ultra, Secret, and then all of the different luxury rarities as well. However, I do actually want to focus on the lower rarity printings because those are the ones that are very easily accessible that most players are going to be dealing with. So with those printings, for the most part, they were around $8 to $10 before. However, we've now seen a significant surge in demand for all of those different lower rarity printings to where they're actually moving at around $12 to $15 per copy. This is definitely notable, even though it is just a few dollars, because it's one of the really easily accessible cards from Rarity Collection. Usually for the Rarity Collection sets, we only see the QCR and then some of the higher end luxury rarity printings trending upwards when the demand goes up, and those lower rarity printings usually stay pretty flat. But Thrust was already a pricier card, so we are seeing a bigger shift for those lower rarities. Definitely one to pay attention to, though hopefully we're going to get another low rarity printing of this card sometime in the near future. On to the next one, we have Kashtira Unicorn. So going into this upcoming format, it seems that a lot of players are choosing to jump on the Kashtira engine in a bunch of different strategies. Oddly enough, they're not actually looking at Fenrir, but more so Kashtira Unicorn. I've seen a bunch of deck lists that are adding 3 Unicorn, 1 Fenrir, 1 Birth, and 1 Raitsoth. Of course, Unicorn can search for Birth, so the engine provides you multiple bodies to use as link fodder since Birth can revive a monster back. However, one of the cool things is Unicorn's ability to actually rip a card from your opponent's extra deck face down. It basically stops Ryziel players from activating monster effects, since if you happen to banish a Ryziel player's now one of Detonator face down, they can never access it again and the deck is like 10 times weaker. Now, interestingly enough, the Kashtira cards here in the TCG have managed to dodge both the ban list and reprints. I think that in the OCG they have Fenrir banned and Unicorn at 1, but here in the TCG we have both cards at 3, and they didn't even really see that much play last format. At the same time, I feel like these should have been reprinted in Quarter Century Stampede, since they are such popular cards and neither one has any sort of really high rarity printing, but they've managed to dodge those too. Now that said, the original ultra rares from Darkwing Blast were around $5, they're now up to around $8 to $9, and then the secret rare reprints from the tins were around $8, they're now about $11 to $12 each. Just an interesting one to make note of, since the Kashtira cards are probably a lot stronger going into a more diverse format, and it does feel like there are a ton of viable decks coming out within the next couple of months. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Okay, next up we have Mathmech Superfactorial. So I think that the one change that we saw on the ban list that was pretty unnecessary was the unbanning of Mathmech Circular. Now I do get it, Malice is kind of a waifu deck, so Konami's more invested in keeping Malice alive than they are with something like Bystial. Now that said, I have seen some early Malice builds both with and without Circular, so I guess we won't really know what the quote-unquote like best Malice build is until after the next couple of YCS events. I think there's YCS Mexico City on April 19th and 20th, and then we have YCS Providence at the beginning of May, so we're gonna have a better idea of what's actually good after those events. However, people are definitely assuming that someone is going to try to do something broken with Circular and the other Mathmech cards, so players have bought out Mathmech Superfactorial. Now this card is basically a Tri-Brigade Revolt for Mathmech. The cool thing is that you can bring out Prime Mathmech Laplacian, who can, on summon, send a card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard, as well as both a spell or trap and a monster that they control. So yeah, obviously, the card itself is sort of a brick because you don't want to draw it, but this card does enable a pretty powerful endboard piece with the Mathmech engine. On top of that, while most of the other Mathmech cards were lower rarity or have been reprinted, Superfactorial only has one secret rare printing from back in the side set Mystic Fighters, and as a result, the card literally went from being $1 before the ban list to now being over $15 each. I guess if you do want to play the card, you have to keep that one copy of it, but other than that, definitely, this is something that you want to dump as fast as possible before the price tanks. Alright, now this is a bit more of an obvious one. We have Bystial Saronir. So the Bystial cards are obviously still really good. They're big bodies, and they're really strong against a lot of different cards and strategies, since they can hit the Blue Eyes deck, the Fiendsmith engine, and then cards like Eclipse Twins and X-Ryzial as well. So Druid's Worm was a pretty significant limiting. Druid's Worm was able to out a ton of different monsters. So for the most part, Bystial heavy packages were running 1 Magnamut and 3 Druid's Worm, and then they had the option to run Baldrake and Saronir as well. However, with the limiting of Druid's Worm, players are probably going to have to turn to running more copies of Baldrake and or Saronir, and they might even be more important now given that the Fiendsmith engine went completely untouched. That said, Baldrake was originally a common, so it's pretty easily accessible. However, Saronir is something that has seen a decent amount of demand recently, while Baldrake has the ability to be an additional interruption if you do have another Bystial, Nibiru, or Phantasme. Saronir is also a really solid card because it's able to send the Bystial Lubellion from your deck to the graveyard, who can then potentially be summoned back later on in the game. The card only has 2 different printings. This was originally a super rare, along with Magnamut and Druid's Worm in Darkwing Blast, and then it was a secret rare in the 2023 tins. Both of these cards used to only be $4 to $5 each, but both versions are now up to $7 to $8 a piece. Saronir was already sort of like the one that was kind of forgotten about, since it is admittedly the weakest of all the Bystials, but given the limitations that have hit the others, now is definitely a time to keep an eye on it. Okay, so this is a pretty cool one. We have the Duke of Demise. So this is actually a brand new card out of Maze of the Master, and it's something that a lot of players were excited to finally see here in the TCG. This card is a level 6 Fiend Fusion that requires 2 Fiend and or Zombie monsters to make, and it can grant you an additional normal summon, as well as banish itself from the graveyard to add a level 4 or higher Fiend or Zombie from your graveyard back to your hand. So of course this is a very valid super polymerization target for zombie decks if you are choosing to play Zombie World. However, I think the more exciting thing with this card is that it works really well alongside the Fiendsmith engine. You can special summon this card with the effect of Sequence since it is a Fiend, and you can also use it to make DDD Wave High King Caesar. On top of that, adding just a free resource out of your graveyard is pretty cool too. I do think that a big part of the reasoning for the hype of this card is the fact that Sharvara went from limited to semi-limited. Unchained was in a really bad spot with Sharvara at 1, but I think a lot of players are excited to try out Fiendsmith Unchained, and they'll be looking to run Duke of Demise in the extra deck as an alternative extender that can be made with the effect of Sequence. Now when Maze dropped, it wasn't exactly obvious where exactly this card was going to be good, so it was pretty cheap coming in at $2 to $3 each. However, over the course of the last week or so, the card has more than doubled in price. They're now going for around $7 each on TCG Player. Definitely a really cool card to consider picking up while it is still in the single digits. I feel like if we do get some Fiend or Zombie support in the near future, this is the type of card that would instantly skyrocket in price even further. Alright, now this one, I'm not really sure of just how real this is, but I'm looking at Tearlaments reinoheart, so apparently the Tearlament deck has been doing really well online. I think DB Grinder posted a couple of replays with it, including his own replays where he's actually done really well with the deck. To be fair, Tearlaments no longer have to deal with Abyss Dweller and Dimension Shifter, two things that literally prevented the deck from playing the game, and Druid's Worm is also limited, so that's fewer copies of that card that they now have to worry about. However, I don't know if Tear actually has the potential to be a really good deck, or if it's just something that people are playing around with because they want the deck to be good again, so they're just playing a lot with it. Anyways, reinoheart is one of the few Tearlament monsters at 3, and it's a good one because it dumps one of the others that allows you to fuse, so it basically sets up the fusion play on its own. Oddly enough, reinoheart still only has 2 different printings. Its original ultra rare printing was back in Power of the Elements. Those are untouched and haven't really moved price-wise at around $8 each. However, the ultimate rares have doubled in price within the last week or so, going from around $10 to now sitting just under the $20 mark. Still a notable price jump, though admittedly this could also be because people want to play Ishizu tier mirrors as an old format kind of thing. I feel like if Konami does do a Rarity Collection 5, reinoheart is the type of card that would be included in that sort of nostalgia pool, so holding on to too many copies of this card might not be the best idea. And finally, the last card we're touching for today is the Time-Tearing Morganite. So the Morganite cards actually got a monster for their own mini archetype, and the monster is actually pretty good since it's able to search for any of the Morganite spells. Now, every replay I've seen that's been trying to showcase what the whole Morganite archetype can do has really been pretty degenerate. It's all just stuff like floodgating your opponent with Archlord Christia or Vanity's Fiend and Majesty's Fiend. Because of that, I don't think the cards are actually really going to be that good or relevant at all. However, I do think it'll attract some of those troll anti-meta players because of the new support. Players are actively looking to buy out Time-Tearing Morganite. This is arguably the best one since it lets you draw 2 cards every single draw phase as well as get 2 normal summons every turn, which honestly is pretty broken. So yeah, while it's not exactly meta relevant or anything like that, it does enable a troll strategy, so there's naturally going to be something of a market for it. Time-Tearing Morganite has 2 different printings. Both of them have jumped in price quite a bit. Most notably, the secret rares from the 2024 tins used to only be $2 to $3 each. They're now up to like $13 lowest on TCG Player. And then we also have the original supers from Cyberstorm Access. They used to be $2 to $3. Even those are now up to $7 to $8 a piece. Definitely worth making note of. This is the type of card that I would definitely try to offload if you can, if you are able to find someone at your locals that actually wants to try and play the deck when the rest of the cards come out in Duelist Advance. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely we are going to see more videos like this over the next couple of weeks because the ban list was so big. We're just going to see all of these changes as people try to adapt. Anyways, we do also have Rarity Collection Stampede that is coming out this weekend, so best of luck with you guys' pulls. If you guys haven't already seen it, we did do a video where we did the giant case split between me, Tom, and a couple of our other friends, so go check that out if you haven't already. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.